Hi, I'm Rachel Proctor. Today I want to talk about a topic that doesn't get nearly enough attention: how ADHD shows up in women and why that matters. Even though awareness around ADHD has been growing, a lot of the ways we diagnose and treat it are still based on how it presents in boys and men. That means many women are overlooked or misdiagnosed, especially since their symptoms often show up in more subtle or internal ways, like difficulty focusing, emotional ups and downs, and chronic overwhelm. On top of that, women deal with unique challenges like hormonal changes and juggling multiple roles across home, school, and work. In this presentation, I'll walk you through a more holistic, gender-aware approach to supporting women with ADHD, one that blends therapy, coaching, education, and hormonal insights to help women better understand their brains and thrive in their everyday lives. Nussbaum's article takes a closer look at how ADHD shows up differently in women and why that matters. While adult men and women are diagnosed at similar rates, girls are often missed early on because their symptoms, like trouble focusing or managing emotions, tend to fly under the radar. This can lead to years of misdiagnosis and challenges in school and beyond. Women with ADHD also deal with unique brain-based struggles, especially around working memory and hormonal changes, like shifts in estrogen or thyroid levels, and can make symptoms worse. These challenges often spill over into school, work, and relationships, taking a toll on confidence and career direction. Nussbaum pushes for treatment that's actually built with women in mind, including things like hormone-aware care, cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and practical skills training. Nussbaum also highlights the need for better research and more accurate ways to diagnose ADHD in women. Soler, Gutierrez, Perez Gonzalez, and Mayes took a deep dive into emotional dysregulation in adults with ADHD. And their review makes a strong case for recognizing it as a core part of the condition. While ADHD is usually defined by inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity, this research highlights a fourth key challenge: trouble managing emotions. Looking at 22 studies, they found that up to 70% of adults with ADHD struggle with things like irritability, anger, and impulsive emotional reactions. These emotional ups and downs can seriously impact work, relationships, and daily life. Brain imaging shows it's not about being too emotional, but rather about difficulties with executive function, basically, the brain's ability to regulate responses. Many adults with ADHD rely on coping strategies that don't really help, like pushing emotions down, which often makes things worse. While approaches like mindfulness show promise, there's still not enough research, especially when it comes to women, who may deal with added emotional and parenting pressures. The takeaway? The more intense the ADHD symptoms, the more emotional regulation becomes a challenge. So treatment needs to address this head on. Forrester and colleagues looked at how adults with ADHD handled distractions and whether making a task more mentally demanding could actually help. In a lab experiment, they found that people with ADHD were more easily thrown off by irrelevant stuff, which slowed down their reaction times. But when a task became more complex or with a higher perceptual load, their performance improved and started to match that of people without ADHD. This lines up with something called load theory, the idea that when our brains are really focused on a demanding task, we're less likely to get sidetracked because there's no leftover brain power for distractions. Basically, giving the brain more to do can help it filter out the noise. The takeaway? Adjusting how challenging a task is might be a simple way to help manage distraction in real life. That said, The study didn't look at gender differences, so we still don't know how well this applies across the board. Eddy et al. Studied how effective the Access program, a CBT-based intervention, is for college students with ADHD. These students often struggle with things like planning, staying organized, meeting deadlines, and juggling responsibilities. Even with medication, many still face serious challenges in school and everyday life. In the study, students diagnosed with ADHD were randomly placed into either the Access program or a waitlist group. Access was built specifically for college students and combined group CBT sessions with one-on-one mentoring. It ran over 2 semesters with more intensive support in the first semester and a lighter follow-up in the second. The results were promising. Students in the Access group saw major improvements in motivation, time management, study habits, and general functioning. They also reported doing better at handling daily tasks and responsibilities. The program had a moderate to strong positive impact on ADHD symptoms and executive functioning. Bottom line, tailored, ongoing support like Access can really help students with ADHD, not just with academics, but with their overall quality of life. In Turning Intentions into Actions, Ramsey reframes ADHD not just as a problem with attention or hyperactivity, but as a challenge with self-regulation and executive functioning. Adults with ADHD often know what they need to do, but following through, especially when there's no immediate payoff, can be a real struggle. The article highlights CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, as a powerful tool to help adults with ADHD actually turn their goals into action. Ramsey shares the story of Teresa, a recent grad who is having trouble at work with time management, forgetfulness, and disorganization. After getting diagnosed with ADHD, she started a combined treatment plan with medication and CBT. Over 6 months, CBT gave her practical tools like reworking unhelpful thoughts, setting up structured routines, and using mindfulness. These strategies helped her not only perform better at work, but also improve areas like sleep and relationships. Her symptoms didn't completely go away, but her overall functioning got a lot better. Ramsey argues that CBT should be a core part of a long-term ADHD treatment, not just a supplement to medication. He also stresses the need for better ways to track progress, like using real-life behavior data instead of just checklists, and calls out the lack of gender-specific insight in ADHD research and treatment. Sander Williams' 2024 study looks at ADHD coaching for women diagnosed later in life, a group that's often left out of both research and treatment conversations. The study used a method called interpretive phenomenological analysis to dig into the personal experiences of women over 40 who had recently been diagnosed. Many of the women described feeling a mix of emotions, relief, grief, even regret, as they looked back and realized how undiagnosed ADHD had shaped their lives. Coaching played a big role in helping them let go of self-blame, understand how their brains work, and learn practical strategies for challenges like managing time, emotions, and daily tasks. One of the biggest takeaways was around identity. Coaching gave these women the space to ask questions like, who am I now that I know this about myself? Especially after years of masking to meet others' expectations. Psychoeducation was a key part of this, helping them gain clarity, feel validated, and practice more self-compassion. Participants especially appreciated working with coaches who understood ADHD personally. It created a safe, judgment-free space for real growth. They also emphasized how important it is for coaching to be a gender-sensitive, recognizing things like caregiving demands, emotional labor, and stigma that women with ADHD often face. The study calls for more research on coaching as part of a broader, gender-informed treatment approach especially for women diagnosed in midlife and beyond. It also points to the need for exploring options like group coaching and support that takes hormonal changes into account. This integrated plan is all about supporting women with ADHD in a way that takes their whole experience into account: hormones, emotions, thinking patterns, and life roles. First, hormonal testing, especially for estrogen and thyroid levels, is key, since these can really affect how symptoms show up during puberty, after childbirth, and through perimenopause. CBT helps with executive functioning and emotional regulation, critical for women managing busy roles at work or home. ADHD-focused coaching adds another layer, helping women, especially those diagnosed later in life, build the confidence and reconnect with their strengths and identity. Mindfulness can also help with emotional ups and downs, which are super common in women with ADHD. On top of that, psychoeducation and self-esteem work are important for challenging the stigma many women carry and for building self-understanding. Finally, practical tools based on cognitive load theory, like time management, planning, and attention strategies, can really boost day-to-day success at school or work. Altogether, this approach goes beyond just treating symptoms. It's about improving daily life and helping women truly thrive. This intervention plan is built to support women with ADHD in a way that really fits their lived experiences, not just the symptoms, but the emotional, cognitive, and identity challenge that often get overlooked in traditional care. First, the focus is on boosting self-regulation and executive function in everyday roles, whether at work, in school, or managing home life. We'll use CBT to tackle time management and follow-through, plus add functional skills training to help with focus and reduce distractions. Second, we're targeting emotional regulation. Mindfulness tools can help with managing big emotions, and CBT will also be used to reduce stress reactivity and emotional overwhelm. Third, this plan supports identity and self-esteem, especially important for women diagnosed later in life. Through psychoeducation that reflects the female ADHD experience and strengths-based coaching, we help women rebuild confidence and develop resilience. Finally, we factor in hormone shifts, like those during postpartum or perimenopause, that can seriously affect symptoms. By monitoring things like estrogen and thyroid levels, we can adapt support to better meet women's needs during these times. This intervention is designed for adult women with ADHD, especially those diagnosed in their teens or later in life. Many of these women deal with symptoms that often get missed, like inattention, emotional ups and downs, and internal stress. Juggling work, school, or caregiving, they face a unique mix of challenges where ADHD intersects with hormonal changes and social expectations. For those diagnosed later, there can also be long-term impacts on self-esteem and a sense of never quite reaching their potential. This program focuses on those gender-specific experiences, offering personalized and compassionate support to help women feel understood, capable, and empowered. This intervention starts with a thorough, personalized assessment process. Each participant goes through a diagnostic confirmation, hormone testing focused on estrogen and thyroid levels, and a psychosocial evaluation to get a full picture of their stressors and daily challenges. From there, a tailored care plan is built around key supports. Weekly CBT sessions, which focus on improving executive function and emotional regulation. Bi-weekly ADHD coaching to help with identity, self-confidence, and independence, especially important for women diagnosed later in life. Mindfulness practices, offered in small groups or individually to support emotional balance. Psychoeducation is integrated throughout the program to challenge stigma and build self-compassion. And functional skills training gives practical strategies for managing time, staying organized, and improving focus. This whole person approach is designed to meet women where they are and help them thrive both day to day and long term. All of these principles come together to form a more compassionate, practical, and effective approach to ADHD care for women. The full intervention would run over 12 to 16 weeks, with progress tracked along the way using standardized tools and regular check-ins. Hormonal factors are reassessed at the halfway point and again at the end, so we could adjust the plan if needed. One of the most important parts of this approach is teamwork. Clinicians, ADHD coaches, and participants would all work together to make sure care stays flexible and truly personalized. The goal is to meet the complex, real-world needs of women with ADHD, not just with effective treatments, but with a deep understanding of their lived experiences. This model blends clinical support with real-life relevance, making it both evidence-based and meaningful. This section lays out the key cognitive principles behind a gender-responsive approach to ADHD care for adult women. These principles are grounded in neuroscience, learning theory, and, just as importantly, real-life experience. First, we know that executive function challenges like trouble with planning, impulse control, and working memory are common in women with ADHD. That's why we would use tools like CBT and functional skills training to strengthen these areas and support daily follow-through. Second, cognitive load theory shows us that when tasks are too simple, they actually leave more room for distraction. But when we carefully increase the mental demand, it helps the brain focus better and tune out irrelevant information. Third, emotional dysregulation isn't just a side effect of ADHD, it's often central to it. And it's not about being overly emotional, it's about the brain struggling to regulate emotions due to executive dysfunction. Mindfulness and CBT can help rebuild that emotional control. Fourth, hormones matter a lot. Estrogen and thyroid fluctuations can make ADHD symptoms worse, especially during puberty, after childbirth, or in perimenopause. That's why hormonal monitoring is built into the intervention, allowing it to flex with each woman's changing needs. Fifth, many women don't get diagnosed until adulthood, after years of internalized shame or self-blame. Coaching and psychoeducation are key tools for rebuilding identity, boosting self-awareness, and developing a stronger sense of autonomy. And finally, constructivist learning theory reminds us that meaningful change happens when support is grounded in real life. That means meeting women where they are, in their academic, professional, or caregiving roles, and reframing ADHD not as a flaw, but as a different way of thinking. Psychoeducation helps participants reclaim confidence and agency in their own lives. All of these principles come together to form a more compassionate, practical, and effective approach to ADHD care for women. To evaluate how well the intervention works, we would use a mixed methods approach, which means we'll look at both numbers and personal experiences. On the quantitative side, we'll measure things like executive function, emotional regulation, ADHD symptoms, and overall quality of life before and after the intervention. We'll use standardized tools for this. We'll also keep an eye on hormone levels throughout the process to see if there's any connection with changes in symptoms. Plus, we'll track how participants are doing in real life, things like time management and focus, through self-reports and clinician evaluations. On the qualitative side, we'll do interviews after the intervention to dive deeper into things like identity, self-esteem, and how ADHD coaching and psychoeducation have impacted their lives. We'll also gather satisfaction surveys to understand how participants feel about the program, the coaching relationship, and whether they found the experience helpful. Together, these methods will give us a full picture of how effective the program is and help us fine-tune it for future improvements. This intervention is designed to create real, meaningful changes across clinical, functional, and psychosocial areas. First, we expect to see improvements in clinical outcomes, things like better executive functioning, improved emotional regulation, and a reduction in ADHD symptoms. We'll measure these things using validated tools like the BRIEF-A, DERS, ASRS, and WHOQOL-BREF. That's a mouthful. Next, we're focusing on how hormones might impact symptoms. We'll track hormone levels at different points during the intervention to see if there's any connection between hormone changes and symptom shifts, building on Nussbaum's work from 2012. When it comes to daily life, we expect participants to report better management of responsibilities at school, work, and home. We'll track these improvements with self-reports and evaluations from clinicians. Psychosocial outcomes are also key, particularly around self-identity and self-esteem. We expect ADHD coaching and psychoeducation to help boost these areas. Finally, we'll assess how satisfied participants are with the program through surveys. We'll look at things like the therapeutic relationship, how accessible the program is, and how relevant the intervention components are. This feedback will help us improve the program in the future. Overall, this comprehensive evaluation will help ensure the intervention is not only clinically effective, but also truly resonates with and meets the needs of women with ADHD. I chose this topic because it's something that really hits close to home for me. As a woman diagnosed with ADHD in my late teens, I've personally dealt with things like inattention and emotional dysregulation. Through diving into the research for this presentation, I gained a much deeper understanding of my own experiences and realized just how differently ADHD can show up in women compared to men. In my professional work as an addiction and mental health worker, I see a lot of clients with ADHD. The more I explored this topic, the more I noticed clear differences in how ADHD presents in my male clients versus my female clients. This has been an eye-opening experience. Now, I'm better equipped to spot patterns in my female clients that I may have missed before, or that might have even led to misdiagnosis. And even more importantly, I'm excited to share what I've learned with my colleagues. This will help us all better assess and support our clients and work more effectively with the psychiatrists we collaborate with. Even though ADHD is now recognized as a lifelong condition, many of the unique challenges women face, like emotional, cognitive, and hormonal factors, are still overlooked in diagnosis and treatment. Research shows that women are often underdiagnosed and deal with things like internalized stigma, emotional dysregulation, and difficulties in daily life. These challenges can get worse with hormonal changes throughout life, which most treatment models don't take into account. That's why a gender-responsive, integrative approach, one that combines things like CBT, mindfulness, ADHD coaching, hormonal monitoring, psychoeducation, and life skills training, can really help fill these gaps. Instead of just focusing on symptoms, this approach centers on real-life function, which leads to better outcomes and higher quality of life for women with ADHD.